Hello and welcome to the exclusive advanced class for Easy Wonder die number 1. In this class, I will be showing you how to use this die above and beyond how it was designed to be used. My name is Lynn, or LV Handcrafted, here on YouTube, and I actually had the pleasure of getting to design this die for Not Too Shabby. Thank you so much for supporting Not Too Shabby as well as myself in getting not only this die but the 2 companion classes, the introduction and this advanced class. I hope that between these 2 classes you get a lot of different ideas for how you can use the die as it was designed to be used, but as well how you can reimagine different things that you can do with this die, because at the end of the day, I see it as being able to cut and provide lots of building blocks for you to craft with. In my introduction class, I showed you how to make the 4 card sketches that are suggested. These card sketches show you how to use every single element that is cut from this die and use them on 4 distinct different card sketches. So that's a great starting place for how to start working with this die if you've never used it before. Let me show you a couple of the cards that I showed how to make. So these represent each of those 4 different card sketches, but there's lots that you can do with this die beyond just the 4 sketches shown, because when you look at it, it's one large die plate that cuts out a lot of individual elements. And in fact, you're going to get in total, you'll have 9 elements from just running this through your die cutting machine the one time. You'll have a few different banners, different rectangles, different size squares, and even a circle. So you can really use those components anywhere and configure them however you'd like on your card. I've designed this die because I put out mini one-sheet wonders as digital printables on my channel, which is LV Handcrafted, but how convenient is it to have a single die cut out all of the pieces that you need and be able to do some really interesting things like circle die cuts from within another shape, which allows the opportunity for having fun apertures. And with that, of course, I always think shaker cards. So in this video, I'll show you how to make a shaker card using this element here. And this is why I've called the die Easy Wonder, because it takes a one-sheet wonder and makes it so easy. This die has been designed so that it fits exactly onto a 6x6 sheet of patterned paper with very little waste. And the reason why we've designed it this way is so that it is easy for you to place the die and position it onto your paper, and you don't have to worry about getting it perfectly. If we made it 6x6 exactly, if you were off a little bit, you might actually lose a little bit of your die cut. So that's why we've made it just a smidge smaller than 6x6. It makes it so that you're still wasting very little of your gorgeous pattern papers, but it's going to be really easy for you to position this time and time again. So with in this class, I'll be making 3 cards, and I'll show you a couple different card layouts that you can create, and as well, I'll show you a shaker card. Without further ado, let's make some cards. Okay, so to start, a lot of my cards will feature, well, probably all of them today will feature partial die cutting. That is one of the things that I see as a technique that will really help you stretch how versatile this die is. So if you've never done partial die cutting, all that is die cutting just a part or an element from the die. In this case, these elements were designed so that they could be used individually. So all I'm doing is cutting a bit of scrap cardstock, large enough for the elements that I want. In this case, there are 3 banner dies that are the same size. So I want all 3 of them. And I've placed my cardstock over just those portions. And now I'm going to run that through and get my 3 banners. So that's how easy it is to pick and choose elements from the Easy Wonder die number 1 and use those in any way you'd like on your card. One of the things that I thought would be really fun is to actually assemble these a little bit similar to, there's a sweater that I have that has these faux sort of buckles, and it's just like a little bit of an accent design at the bottom towards the hem of the sweater. And I thought it would be cute to replicate that on this card. So I've picked one pattern paper that I have cut to about 2.5 inches wide. Doesn't necessarily have to be exactly that wide, but that's what I went with. And then I have a second sheet of pattern paper, and that one I've cut to about 3.5 inches wide. And I just eyeballed an angle to cut that top layer from. So that way we get a mix of these 2 pattern papers. I used a pinstripe sticker to really clean up the edge of the border where the 2 of those pattern papers overlap. And then I'm going to use these banners to create a little bit of a buckle. And they're rather large, so in my head, even though that was initially my design, what I thought I would do is actually pick out the circle element from this die. I did another little bit of partial die cutting, so this is a great way to use up your scraps as well. So as you can see here on this card, I'm not using pattern paper to die cut from. I'm die cutting out of solid color cardstock. So even though I've designed this die so that you can easily cut down a sheet of 6x6 pattern paper, you could definitely cut it out of anything that you'd like and use the elements however you'd like. One of the things that's really fabulous is that if you wanted, you could die cut the whole plate out of solid color cardstock and then just, leave some of those elements maybe in a little stash that you can pick out of when you need a little shaped element for your card. So, well, it's easier for me to use up my scraps to pick and choose these individual elements and do partial die cutting. You could always die cut everything and have those elements ready to go and leave them to one side as you need them. So there's lots of different ways, especially when you're cutting out of solid color cardstock. I feel like the elements are going to be really easy to use up on future cards. So it's a great way, just like how I tend to have a stash of stamped or foiled sentiments at the ready. This die can help you have some basic building blocks at the ready, some really nice shapes that have this lovely stitch border detailing, and you can just leave it to one side, and that way when you need something, you can just rummage through that little box and get the exact size banner, circle, square, rectangle that you need. So for my focal image, I am using the ephemera that matches with the Simply Spring paper pad that I'm using. This ephemera pack is from, and the paper is from the February quarterly release, and it's really just gorgeous. I love the soft color palette in this quarterly release. It's really beautiful. A lot of times when I see spring collections, I often see very, very bright colors, which I love, but this color palette is definitely more my jam. So I absolutely love the Simply Spring paper pad. Now I'm on to my second card, and for this card, I am going to use the largest square, and it does have a circle that is cut out of the center of it. And I've showed you in the introduction class how this was designed to be used, but there are so many different ways you can use this element. The one thing that I will definitely show you on my third card is how to use this as a shaker card element. So stay tuned for that. But in this card, I've done another partial die cutting of that circle with the square on the outside of it. And I've just cut another square. You can cut that in your paper trimmer. If you happen to have a square die, you can use that as well. But the square element, you could, if you wanted, just use that as a matte layer behind another square and cover up the circle aperture completely. So you could definitely still use this square as a square element and just cover up the center circle that's been cut out of it, and no one would ever know that there was missing cardstock underneath there. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take that circle and layer it right on top of my solid square. And that gives me a nice kind of stacked effect that is just something a little bit different. So these elements, you can really let your creativity go wild with them and use them however you'd like. The one thing that I thought was really fun and interesting about embedding an aperture into one of the shapes is that you do have the ability to do as I'm doing here, where you can cover up that aperture and just use it for the shape as a bit of a mat or a frame. But it does allow you to use that negative space for interesting things like a shaker card, which I'll show later. And in fact, one of the ideas I have is to, if I have the opportunity to design more of these Easy Wonder dies, I would love to have a word that is actually cut into one of the shaped elements. It allows you to do things like eclipse cards. It gives you a word die built right into the Easy Wonder design. And you have the shaker aspect that you can create from that as well. And how fabulous would it be to have words that come with this so that you can actually use the word standalone if you wanted to do some partial die cutting just to pick out the word. So I feel like with Easy Wonder dies, it takes a one sheet wonder cutting guide and really elevates it to something that you really can't easily and quickly do by just hand cutting alone. So the dies are really fabulous for that, and as well being able to add details like the stitched border design. There's so many things that we can do with that as well. We can do a pierced border design. We can do a wonky stitch border design. So those are things that I would never be able to do by hand if I were to hand cut for this the mini one sheet wonder that this die was originally designed after. So I thank you so much for purchasing the die and purchasing this class to go along with it, because if it's a successful product, then hopefully there's going to be demand for more dies like these, and I would be so honored and happy to be able to bring more Easy Wonder dies to you. So definitely let us know in the comments if that's something you would like to see, and we can make that happen. So I'm well on my way to finishing up my second card here, and I've actually used this particular square element on a 5x7 card. So while I have designed the die to create A2 size cards, these elements are scaled really well, so you can actually use them for, really any size card. And so that's what I wanted to illustrate with this particular card, that you're not restricted to just using them for A2 cards. Certainly some of the elements might be smaller and better suited for a smaller card, but lots of these elements work beautifully on larger cards as well. Okay, so now we're on to the third and last card that I will make in this class, and that's going to be the shaker card. So I'm going to start off again with a bit of scrap paper that I'll do some partial die cutting to pick out that square element with the circle aperture. So I'm going to position this, and it just so happens that it's large enough for me to cover some of those smaller banners as well. So why not? Let's cut those out at the same time. I don't have any plans to use those banners on this particular card, but I will just set it aside, like I said, and when I need a banner in this color, I'll already have one ready to go. The main piece that I want out of this, though, is the square with that circle aperture. Now, anytime I see an aperture, I immediately think shaker card, so I want to definitely show you how you can use this. But here's another way that you can use this die. Now, I've cut out the longer banner, and then I'm going to position that same banner right back into the same area and just wiggle it around a little until you feel it kind of lock into place, because the stitches are even and they will lock into place. And by die cutting it a second time, just by rotating it, I can get a double fishtail banner. And I've managed to cut it down to size so that it's the exact size that I want. And if you wanted the nice professional edge as a straight line, you could just line it back up so that it instead of cutting a fishtail on the end that you want to cut off, you can cut off the straight line too. And that gets you that stitched border detailing all the way around. So you can definitely cut these pieces even smaller if you need. So there's a long rectangle. If you wanted, you could do another partial die cutting to cut that down to a smaller or a more narrow width if you wanted. And same with any of the banners. So that again shows you just all the more ways that you can adapt and use this die to create differently sized elements. To start my shaker card, I lined the back of that square with some clear acetate. I've also cut out a bit of vellum because I want to soften the pattern paper that will be behind the square. That way the shaker element will be a little bit more visible. It'll feel a little bit less busy because this pattern is a very busy pattern, but it's still going to let some of that color come through, some of the pattern come through, so it doesn't take away too much from the card. Now, the way I like to make my shakers is I do like to close off the back completely. So I'm going to peel off the liner on my foam. I was very careful to make sure that my foam makes a completely enclosed well, because you don't want any openings or gaps for your shaker bits to actually fall out of. So you want to make sure that all of your foam butts up against everything to not leave any gaps. I'm going to make my own custom little mix here of some different kind of pearl beads and as well as some tinsel, which by the way, tinsel is very staticky. So that sort of flew everywhere. And it took a bit of time, but I did get everything back in. And when the mix looks about right, I'm going to enclose the back of this with that bit of vellum that I cut out. And that gives me this shaker unit that I can now glue onto my card base. But I like having that as a independent unit so that I can easily position it where I want. If I had worked with that tinsel mix directly on my card base and made a bit of a mound of shaker bits, I can guarantee you all of that static would have just made that tinsel fly everywhere, probably even where my foam is. And so I'm really glad that I did my shaker card this way, which is really how I do it all the time now for the most part. So with that done, I do want to get a sentiment stamped onto my double fishtail banner. And the sentiment that I chose is from one of the 2 stamp sets that released this quarter. This one is from the Cup of Tea stamp set, and it reads, "There's always room for you on my branch." And this is a long sentiment. It would have fit the original length of this particular banner, but because I trimmed off a bit of this banner to make that double fishtail edge, I have to do some partial inking and masking to break this long sentiment into 2 lines. Thankfully, the font is small enough to where it actually looks a little bit nicer on this particular banner, because this banner is pretty tall, and so it can accommodate 2 lines of text. And I just white heat embossed the sentiment because the dark cardstock is a great contrast for that. And now that I have that banner done, and you can see it looks a little bit, to my eyes, better, nice and centered, and that's why I chose to do the double fishtail ends. But certainly if you didn't want to go to the time and effort to do that, you could use the long banner the way it was designed, and this sentiment would have fit just perfectly on there. So I did stamp out an image from the Cup of Tea of the 2 birds on a branch together, and I added some really lovely glitter enamel dots that also released this quarter. So here's a final look at all 3 cards that I made in this advanced class, showing you how to use Easy Wonder die number 1 in different and creative ways. I hope this begins to show you different ways that you can look at this die and use this die so that you can unleash your creativity and create different layouts, create different fun folds maybe, and I can't wait to see what you make with this die. So I hope you'll join us over in the Not Too Shabby Facebook group and share your makes there. Thank you again for supporting Not Too Shabby and me by purchasing this die, and as well the intro and advanced courses. I had a blast creating these classes for you. I hope you'll let me know in the comments below what you think, and if you'd like to see more of these dies, I would be happy to bring you some more Easy Wonder dies, so just let us know in the comments below. Thanks again, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye!